Well, everyone, Viserai, Runeblood is no more. With this third week of the RTN season during the Hunted metagame, Viserai is off to the pearly gates of Living Legend to reunite with his Skeletor, Bloodsheath Skeletor, once again to make a million rune chants and never again mar the face of this great game in Classic Constructed. So obviously, this is going to be our, what is this, 8th or ninth hero entering in Living Legend? This is honestly pretty big news because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Viserai is the first non-talented hero to hit Living Legend. For those who aren't aware, Living Legend is the system in Flesh and Blood TCG where if a hero wins enough to big tournaments, they go and get Hall of Famed and they go away forever, and you never have to worry about them again in their current iteration. Their cards don't necessarily go anywhere. Obviously, if you can't have a Viserai hero, you can't play Viserai specific cards until they make a new version of Viserai, like they did with the new version of Prism that exists, or how there's two versions of Bravo that exist. But whether or not that is the main thing that people care about, it's not really what we're here to talk about today. What we are here to talk about today is the fact that Viserai is going to be leaving now that he has hit that 1,000 point threshold, and so that's going to open up the metagame for so many more heroes to be back on the menu, as it were. One of the most important ones for this channel is going to be Prism, Awakener of Soul. Prism, Awakener of Soul is the second Prism that's been created for Flesh and Blood, and she has been having some rough times for a while. She's had a little bit of success here and there. You know, when Heavy Hitters first came out and the Luminara's Angel's Glow gave her a much needed boost to her offensive pressure. That was really, really good for her. She got to win a Battle Hardened and then got to do some stuff here and there, but was never really dominant during the KO metagame, during a lot of other things like that. Proceed on to from Heavy Hitters. We had, Mistveil. Part the Mistveil happened after that. Zen, Enigma, new, incredibly powerful heroes. Prism was not really able to hold her own in that situation. We went on from the part the Mistveil meta to Rosetta, where Prism, again, was not really the dominant meta hero. We still had to deal with Zen and Enigma and New, but also with Aurora and not so much the Wizards and not so much Florian, but that was still the main challenge of that metagame, especially with Viserai getting tons of new cards, which made him even more consistent with things like Deadwood Dirge and things like that. So with Viserai and Runeblaze in general getting a big boost during that time, all those rune chants, which Prism struggles to pay for because of her heavy yellow focus in her deck, were really hard to keep around to not deny her ward value off of her angels. And the fact that Viserai naturally ran a bunch of 6 power cards and even 9 power cards with 9th Blade of the Blood Oath, Prism was really struggling to be able to get through his armor and all his popper cards and his cards that all blocked 3 before he was able to race her down. Now, with Viserai leaving, Prism is no longer going to have to worry about a very, very difficult and uphill matchup in the form of Viserai. So now, with Prism already doing decently well this RTN season, we will be seeing Prism, I believe, very well poised to take advantage of this new metagame. A lot of heroes such as New and Verdance, as we've talked about on the channel before, Aurora, Acilio, and even a whole bunch of other characters like even Enigma struggle into Prism in some ways because Prism doesn't have so many of those big power attack action cards to worry about. We're not in a Guardian meta yet. We're not in a Brute meta anymore. And with all these go wide aggro decks like Syndra and Arachne Marionette and Arachne Slip Through the Cracks, Assassin in general, right? Prism has a really good opportunity here to throw big attacks that her opponents really struggle to block and don't want to block. And while she will struggle to keep her angels alive against all these ping effects, such as flick knives and daggers and things like that, Prism is looking to be in a really great spot. And I'm very excited to be bringing Prism out of the binder, out of the deck box, back into events. For this past Road to National season, I played Verdance because I wanted to have some fun with Verdance. At Memphis, I played Viserai because I identified that he was indeed one of the best decks in the game. And while I did not have my own personal performances in either of those event seasons, I will be going to the Battle Hardened in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I will almost certainly be bringing Prism and maybe something else. We'll see how the metagame shakes out. But in the meantime, I'm very excited to be making some more Prism content now that the metagame is not so hostile to Prism, to get to flex some of that piloting skill that I have been able to develop over the past number of years, and to not feel like I'm just getting blown out by a million rune chance. So very much looking forward to that. With the banning of Tome of Divinity, though, it does make playing the Aura strategy a lot more difficult. Obviously, also the lack of Luminaris, the original Luminaris, means that you can't really play the same double Aura style that you used to back during Everfest. Not that it was my favorite, but we work with what we're given. And so with Prism having access to potentially some new cards coming out, not that I've heard anything, but we can assume that the next set of Light Illusionist support will be occurring at some point. The only thing that Prism's really got recently is Warcry of Themis, which is not the best card for her and doesn't really solve any of her big issues. While Dusk Till Dawn came out back, if you can believe it, in 2023 summer? So about 2 years ago. So we are overdue for some solid Prism support. Mistveil didn't really give Prism anything to work with on the Illusionist front, and we are still basically working with the exact same cards we were working with back during Dusk Till Dawn's release, which even then only really added the Figments and things like Angelic Wrath. Most of the other cards in Prism deck have been around since Monarch, and so I'm really hoping that Prism can open up her deck building again to include more of these generic Illusionist cards or some generic light cards that can really give her some much needed deck building variety. At the same time, Prism is already sufficiently complex and sufficiently interesting to play, even with her card pool as, let's just say, solved as it is. So I'm hoping that with all these new metagames coming about, with the new set on the horizon, with the High Seas, where we'll be having who knows what's in there, and so on throughout the year, we're hoping that Prism can be in a great position to get over that hump. She's got quite a bit of Living Legend points already. Where is Prism? Right here, 484. So not quite over the halfway point yet, but probably before too long, she's going to be in that upper club there. So while she's not yet reaching that highest echelon, she's definitely outside of the JV club. She's clearly going into varsity. So let's hope that Prism does well in the upcoming metagame. Let's hope that she gets a lot of fun matchups, a lot of great skill expression, and a lot of great new cards to try out new builds that we're not just throwing Wartune Herald and Herald of Triumph for another 3 years. Let's go, LSS. Let's do it. So, all right. Thanks for watching. Be on the lookout. I'm planning on doing a lot more Prism content, a lot more Prism gameplay videos, and a lot more Prism guides for those new players who are interested in picking up a new hero now that a lot of heroes will be Living Legending this season, as well as people who are really eager to play Prism now that she's going to be better positioned in the meta. So be on the lookout. I really want to go through a lot of the nuances of Prism and a lot of the technical details that you need to know if you want to play Prism at a top level. So stay here on the channel, Dozer, Fab, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.